Syracuse. We're going to try and get somebody from the school to talk to us, and also the 11-year-old boy. 11-year-old boy is suspended for refusing to tame his Mohawk haircut. Matt Youngs, 6th grader at Sackett's Harbor Central School. And the parents say, we don't agree with his haircut, but we'll defend in court his right to have that kind of a haircut. And the superintendent, who says that his haircut is as disruptive as extremely short shorts or see-through blouses.
I think the most telling quote in this story is from the superintendent, Alson B. Doherty, who said, quote, "We want a safe, predictable environment in the classroom," which to me says a lot about the goals that our school systems really have for us. Not necessarily that we should learn anything, but it would be kind of like a dog obedience school where we're more efficient, obedient machines when we're plopped into the workforce.
Yeah, a haircut is very much like a see-through blouse. I find it typically just as offensive. You know, someone's hair, you know, they say, I don't like the hair you're wearing, and they want to put you in jail because of that, or suspend you or fire you. We got a police state here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a organization that sends out manuals to police departments and to schools and the like, headquartered in Fullerton, California, called Back in Control. This organization is endorsed by Tipper Gore in her book as a way of curing kids of rock addiction, if you will. And they, among other things, they claim that, well, let me read you some of this manual here. It won't take long. This is too good not to read. It talks about graffiti, for one thing. It says, signs and symbols of heavy metal. Occult graffiti is frequently placed underground, under bridges, and flood control channels, and under freeway overpasses to be closer to hell and the devil. And the occult symbols they list in this book include the Ozzy Osbourne logo, AC/DC. They define the peace symbol as a broken cross upside down with arms broken to mock Christianity. And they even claim the Jewish Star of David is a sign of Satan. And yet at the same time...
Who are these people?
The Back in Control Center in Fullerton, California. They stage half-day classes that some kids are required to go to by judges and things under the premise that because they got caught shoplifting, it must be Ozzy Osbourne's fault or something like that. And the way these people are able to legitimize themselves is they are former L.A. area probation officers, so they get really favorable press down there. And they have all these connections with police departments. Maybe the superintendent up in Sackett's Harbor read this thing. They also have rules here to de-punk and de-metal within the schools, and one of them says, do not wear hair in any style which inhibits the learning process of other students. I don't know what they'd do with Dolly Parton if she was a kid, but...
You know, I found that, if my fellow students had better haircuts, I could have been a much better person, I think, as an adult. Jello Biafra is with us now. Just a couple of basic questions before I want to talk about some issues with you, but why did you pick the name the Dead Kennedys? I know people come to you to name their groups very often, and you talk about that on your album. Because you have come up with some great names for rock groups, but why the Dead Kennedys?
We figured it was one way of putting the value back in shock value, if you will, because Dead Kennedys can mean many different things. It's not necessarily a cheap shot against the tragedy of a very famous family. It's more to call attention to... shall we say, the end of the American dream and the beginning of the so-called me generation, which is now the more popular term is yuppies or whatever. I think one of the reasons people kind of lost their idealism over the years was the Kennedy killings. You look at the way news was covered before John F. Kennedy was shot. You know, hey, it's the atomic age. We're getting bigger, better. Things are going to get better all the time. A movie star, president, gorgeous wife, kapow.
Yeah.
Then America wakes up screaming from the dream and realizes it's a nightmare and slowly but surely gives up on themselves, especially after the Martin Luther King killing, Robert Kennedy, of course. And I would say Vietnam and Watergate were the ones that broke the camel's back, but now we've gotten so into just hiding in our own little cocoons, if you will, that people figure, who cares if Reagan pardons Ollie North?
Hence the title, No More Cocoons, for your current album. What about now the name Jello Biafra? Why did you choose that?
Well, another purpose of our band and of my art is to inspire people to think rather than just having them want to remain spectators, which is what is done with most sporting events and entertainment events in the Western world. You know, what we did with the band was we sort of showed, hey, anybody can play this. How about you? And many more bands rose up in our wake all over the world. And with the name Jello Biafra, it's two very contradicting terms there, very different visual pictures. You have mass starvation nation in Biafra, partly due to American military policy, and then on the other hand, you have plastic American culture, Jello. So collide the images in your mind and see what comes out.
It's a name that one does not forget very, very easily when I hear the name Jello Biafra.
That's good.
Did the dead Kennedys accomplish what you wanted to accomplish for the group? Did it do what you wanted?
It's hard to say. We had many different goals at many different times. I, for one, didn't really want to be the most popular band in the world, but was sort of obsessed with wanting to be the best band in the world, and I don't think we ever really reached that, but we did a number of different experiments. We didn't really sound like anybody else in a lot of ways, and we'll see where eventually what our place in history was. I think in the most of all, I think what means the most to me is when people come up to me and say, yeah, it was you guys who inspired me to get up off my rear end, and here's my record, or here's something I've written, here's something I've painted, here's a film I want to be working on. In other words, spreading positive cultural disease.
Did people get upset and threaten you because of the names you chose for the band?
Usually they did for other reasons. We were very open about not playing for the most monopolistic, cutthroat promoters in a lot of cities, including our own. And partly because of the nature of our music and our audience and our political views, we were subjected to a lot of violent police raids, especially on the West Coast, especially in our hometown of San Francisco and in Los Angeles.
Well, they raided your house at one point because of an album you did with a poster in it. And they came to your house and took some personal mail, didn't they? And
well, it was amazing. They said that they were raiding my house because the Los Angeles police did not like our record album. You know, this sounds kind of like Chile or Soviet Union or something, maybe. I don't know. But they sent 9 police officers to break the window by my front door, storm into the house, and tear it to pieces. Ironically, another person living there who had nothing to do with the band or the Frankenchrist album was a freelance journalist researching an expose on Tipper Gore's hate organization, the PMRC, Parents Music Resource Center, and the police went straight for her file on the PMRC and threw it all over the floor.
Now, you had in the Frankenchrist album, you had a poster, which is done by a very highly respected artist who was featured in Penthouse Magazine. He'd done some stuff for the movies, for motion pictures, and I believe it was up for an Academy Award, or
he won an Academy Award. What we're talking about here is the Swiss surrealist master H.R. Giger. He won an Oscar for designing the sets to the film Alien, as well as the now famous Monster. He's done record covers for Deborah Harry, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He's primarily respected as a painter, and he's appeared in Omni and many other publications.
So you included his poster in your album. And people felt, that one family in particular, felt that this was offensive and got all up in arms and wanted to press charges against her.
Well, the Los Angeles city attorney's official admitted he had a huge file he'd been accumulating for years on prospective rock and roll prosecutions. In other words, they were looking for someone to make an example out of as a way of hopping on the Ed Meese or Tipper Gore or Jimmy Swaggart bandwagon, and they just happened to pick us. And they were pretty open about the fact that who they were really prosecuting was the band, the legacy of the band, and what we were saying and doing with our music. And the Giger painting in question was only their excuse. They had been looking for one for some time, especially after being prodded by Tipper Gore and her friends.
What was on the painting that they objected to?
Well, it was a surrealist painting, so the painting has been interpreted many, many different ways. Everything from sex organs going into undefined holes or possibly coin slots. One person said they thought it was flies. Another person said they thought it was tulips sprouting in a garden. The publisher of BAM magazine testified on our behalf at the trial and just shrugged his shoulders and said to him it looked like a bunch of mud.
I see.
To me, it was consumer culture on parade, and the sexual connotation did fit in my mind to a degree, but not in a smut manner at all. It was more like the ultimate statement against exploitation. And at this point, America is a society of Ivan Boesky wannabes who feed and thrive on exploitation. So we just figured in the fine dead Kennedys tradition, let's confront people with themselves and see what happens.
Now, you had a caveat on the album which stated that not everybody perhaps should listen to this because it had potentially offensive material. And that wasn't enough to assuage the authorities, was it?
Ironically, Tipper Gore, wife of fake liberal presidential candidate Senator Albert Gore
no, he's
Jr.,
not a liberal. He's not a liberal.
said that we should go to jail for a year because our sticker was not worded the way she thought it should have been.
What did your sticker
This is
say?
very bizarre, considering she claims our sticker was violating truth in packaging laws, and yet the PMRC, her organization, refuses to reveal their financial backers.
What did the sticker say?
Well, it said, warning, this album contains a fold-out reproduction of a work of art by H.R. Giger that some may find shocking, repulsive, or offensive. Life can sometimes be that way. I mean, anybody who can put two and two together, unless you're naive and ignorant enough to believe what people like Tipper Gore would say about it, they would realize, oh, well, if this is something that's going to bug me, maybe I can just put it back on the shelf and buy another record. That's what freedom of choice is all about.
The fact that you did that sticker doesn't mean that you necessarily approve of labeling records, do you?
Not at all. It was partly a legal out, granted, because we knew that, like other records we'd done in the past, this was going to be a deliberately controversial record. We were not looking to get ourselves busted, obviously. We figured it wasn't the Joe McCarthy era anymore, and we didn't have to worry. Boy, were we wrong. But generally, labeling records with Tipper Gore's warning stickers is tantamount to censorship for this reason. A bulk of record sales, especially for major labels, the big record companies, comes in chain stores, especially in small-town America where there's nothing but chain stores. Many of those chain stores are located in chain-owned shopping malls. The malls themselves are chains. What happens when the owners of the shopping mall chain threaten to evict any record store that carries any record with any kind of warning sticker whatsoever? The stores can either give Tipper Gore her way and blackball certain artists and records that she and her religious right friends don't happen to like, which is kind of like the McCarthy era, if you will, or they can go out of business. What kind of choice is that? And so when those records turn up back in the return bin at the big record companies, they say, hey, we don't want these stickers on our records. You people are going to have to rewrite this song or omit this song, which is exactly what they did to the Beastie Boys on License to Ill, and unfortunately the Beastie Boys went along. There's one song we will never hear now because whoever, CBS, ordered it taken off the record. I believe it was also a CBS label, Epic, that changed the cover of a Bill Nelson album. I mean, what can be more wicked and harmful than Bill Nelson, ho, ho, ho? And changed the sleeve art and the title out of, quote, fear of offending the religious right.
Yeah.
This is who the real power is behind prosecutions and harassment over records, school textbooks, and Mohawks in the public schools. It's people who are using sometimes valid parental concerns as a Trojan horse in order to further the agenda of people like Jerry Falwell.
Jello Biafra is with us. When we return from this break, I'd like to play from your album, No More Cocoons, Why I'm Glad the Space Shuttle Blew Up. Now, people have to realize if they take you on the surface, they're going to be probably very upset, but not enough people look beyond that, do they?
Well, I'm not a television show. I'm a person, and therefore sometimes I will deliberately set up my artwork so that it challenges people to look beneath the surface and actually think for once.
Because
a lot of different reasons. There were personal reasons, artistic reasons. I think the legal harassment was a factor, but it wasn't the only factor.
All right, now we have a cut from your latest album, which is No More Cocoons, and this is Why I'm Glad the Space Shuttle... What's the official title of this?
Why I'm Glad the Space Shuttle blew up.
And this is something that you do perform live. You'll be at the Ritz tonight here in New York City. And this is Jello Biafra.
Why I'm Glad the Space Shuttle blew up. No! It wasn't the classroom full of school kids on TV. Oh, whispering in horror of what they'd seen on the screen. Each one of them still wearing one of those pointed birthday hats. No! Our first reaction at my house was each of us daring the other to call up the local San Francisco papers and say, oh, hi there. We're that legendary Libyan hit squad you've written so much about. And we blew up the space shuttle. Late that night, we gave up the idea. Same old excuse. What if we get caught?
Sometimes, you know, it really does make sense just to chicken out. But now I find out we were pretty damn lucky. If the Challenger had made it home, things might now be much worse. Because NASA had this little plan for the following space shuttle they somehow forgot to tell us about. Got in the mail Xerox of a magazine called The Nation, and this later turned up in Common Cause, where they reported NASA had these plans to send the next scheduled shuttle into orbit, carrying a payload of 46 pounds of plutonium. It only took a few specks to give Karen Silkwood those zits. 46 pounds of plutonium. If that one had blown up, there'd be enough radiation in the air to cause cancer in as many as 5 billion people. How reckless can you get? Up, and away! We'll just launch Star Wars the easy way. Fire it up into the great beyond and just don't tell anybody you put it there. After all, in America, when people don't know what hurts them, they don't care. Just blame the mysterious fallout cancer epidemic on Gaddafi! And think of all the money people we know and love would make selling How to Cope with Cancer kits to Rolling Stone readers and yuppies. That's why I'm glad the space shuttle blew up.
Jello
If that
Biafra.
next one had gone up, it might have blown up and melted all of us, too.
So there you go. What's the reaction to that when you do that piece, usually? Is it as positive as it...
Well, usually, again, usually the first reaction is, ooh, how could anybody say such a thing? And people start cracking up. But a lot of time when I mention the fact that the next scheduled mission was supposed to have a lot of plutonium on it, people stop to think a little bit, especially when they realize that the next scheduled shuttle is scheduled to have the same plutonium payload on it anyway. And the same scientific information goes. If it blows up, we're all dead. I mean, that's how reckless some of these Pentagon people are about trying to sneak Star Wars past, not necessarily the Soviets as much as the American press and the American people. And
You're not glad those people lost their lives, though, I think.
well, I mean, if you actually listen to the piece you just played, you'd figure that one out,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Just wanted to make that clear. Now, you have other cuts on the album, Vietnam Never Happened.
Uh-huh.
Now, what is the thrust of that?
It's basically a statement on how history is being rewritten so much now to sanitize and even glorify the carnage that went over there. There's been some efforts on the other side to right that, but we still seem to be fighting over how to view that unfortunate event. One thing that I thought was especially interesting was the first batch of ads for the Time Life books on the Vietnam experience, you know, kind of like the Jimi Hendrix experience or whatever. The first batch of ads was all redneck yahoos talking about how great they thought it was to be in Vietnam, and now you could relive it through these books. I take it maybe the books didn't sell because 6 months later a new set of ads comes on. Daddy, what's Vietnam? Remember those? The little kid asks Dad, and Dad talks about how horrible the war is. Now they're trying to sell the same book to the people who opposed the war in Vietnam. Anything to make money out of the suffering of other people.
Now, there's a rather long cut on the album, No More Cocoons, What Reagan Didn't Know. This is a long cut for obvious reasons. There's a lot that he doesn't know, and some of the stuff I had heard before, and some of the other stuff I didn't realize.
There's some new ones now, too. I mean, he was showing a picture of him and Nancy switching partners and dancing with Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos. This was at a USA Today banquet, and he chuckled and said, "Oh, I wasn't actually dancing with the President of Mexico, but next time around, I guess I can." I mean, this guy still scares the living daylights out of me. I mean, he... I don't think he's senile so much as glibly ignorant and so mentally ill he actually believes he's the characters he's played in some of his movies.
No, I think he's
we
senile.
came very close to provoking a world war in Honduras and Nicaragua recently, and now he's trying the same thing in Panama. You know, anything to keep Noriega from spilling the beans on his buddy George Bush. And
who do you support for president? Do you have a favorite candidate? Do you like anybody who's running?
I may actually start voting again just to try and keep Bush and Albert Gore out of the White House.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm wondering whether it's more realistic just to vote for your favorite corporation because they're the ones who run things anyway.
Now, I know why you make conservatives nervous. Why do you think you make liberals so nervous?
I make liberals nervous.
You don't think you do?
Maybe as I was talking earlier about using our art to confront people with themselves. I mean, some people who thought they were liberal were very, very upset with the Giger poster, and almost everybody I showed it to at first hated it or loved it or hated it for different reasons. In other words, a powerful piece of art that inspires people to think.
Now, you've also spoken out against people like Van Halen. You think that he's probably more dangerous than almost any of the other people performing.
Not necessarily Van Halen. I think I was singling out the people with the right-wing bozo lyrics like Sammy Hagar or Agnostic Front or MOD. You know, the people who were awarded these huge record contracts and in kind of an inside track to playing to large audiences, partly based on the fact that they promote redneck goon activity among the audience. And I don't think rock lyrics alone would cause something like that, but I do think that, I mean, people can say anything they want to in a song as far as I'm concerned, but I do think it's something that with our own songs and our own art we should separate ourselves from and oppose. But say, if we're talking about the rights of parents here, say I had a kid who brought home something I thought really was offensive. I mean, I think it would be the most chicken-hearted possible thing to do would be to call the cops and try to have the artist arrested. I mean, that's what we have now is parents who are so afraid of their own kids.
Well, that's what happened to you.
They won't even talk to them.
With the Frankenchrist album, that's what happened to you.
Right. So instead, I think, say my kid brought home Top Gun on video or something like that. I don't think it would really solve the real problem just to take the video away and punish the kid. I mean, that wouldn't communicate to the kid why I, a parent, might object to that article. What you're going to have to do is sit down and talk with your kids. Ask them why they like it, why they think this is so cool, what do they see in it. You know, okay, you bought this album, how do you think the women portrayed in this song really feel? And now I, the parent, will tell you what I don't like about it. I mean, people like Tipper Gore and Back in Control are anti-family communication. They're the kind of people who hide behind a veil of family values as they split families apart by getting everybody to hate each other's guts and brutalize each other.
It kills me that these families will go to... I mean, it's amazing to me that in the 80s, someone will go to the authorities and try to get Jello Biafra arrested because they didn't like a poster in his album, which they feel was detrimental to the emotional well-being of their kid. When as you just said...
Well, that kid sure didn't look too happy being forced to testify against me on a witness stand. Yeah. She even said afterwards she felt she wasn't harmed by the poster or the album in any way, and her mom said she was surprised the prosecutors made, as she put it, such a big to-do about it. In other words, they seemed to intimate they felt totally used by somebody who was trying to wreck our careers to further his own.
If these parents would communicate with their kids more and, or just like this kid in upstate New York with a Mohawk haircut, in this case, it's not the parents' fault, but the school system is getting all bent out of shape. The poor kid is just being a kid, having a good time.
The parent of the kid with a Mohawk had an interesting comment, too. It was either the mom or the dad said, well, I don't like the haircut either, but if that's what he wants, let him have it.
Yeah, I know, the parents are willing to go to court to defend the kid's right to wear whatever hair they want. It's amazing that in 1988 we're still having this kind of issue raised. I thought this stuff went out 20 years ago.
Well, it did, but then the people who wanted to bring it back sort of got back together, retooled their strategy, mastered the art of the computerized mailing list, and pow, all of a sudden a movie actor is president. There's 10 Jesse Helms clones in the U.S. Senate, including one from New York. And
D'Amato's not as bad as Helms. You can't put them in the same category.
Well, in some ways. I would say Helms was generally worse, but...
Really, I mean, D'Amato was really opposed Reagan on many key issues, and I really have to disagree with that. But we're going to take a break here. Well, yeah, go ahead.
But as I was saying, I think the reason we're seeing all these kind of things happen again, the attacks on school textbooks, right outside my hometown, some right-wing parents tried to ban Halloween in the public schools because they didn't want their children exposed to kids dressing up as witches. In other words, just trying to impose their own religious bigotry on everybody else. And most of the money going to these hate groups is coming from the religious right or corporations who are well known for funding far-right-wing activities. Rock and Roll Confidential has linked Tipper Gore and her friends to Coors, for example.
It bothers me that in the campaign of Al Gore for president, not enough attention has been paid to the liability he carries around called Tipper Gore, and We believe that Al Gore may be with us next week, in which case I plan to discuss this with him.
What you will meet in him is a very skilled liar. I mean, people complain about Gary Hart and Joe Biden having problems in the honesty department. Wait till they meet Albert Gore. Believe it or not, Gore solicited and accepted rock music industry money to run for president, saying, hey, I'm your point man for nuclear arms reduction. I'm anti-war. Once he gets into the Senate, he helps stage hearings against rock music with his wife, coincidentally, as the lead-off witness, although he bragged about it at the time and now denies having anything to do with the hearings, and also is the point man for the Midget Man missile and is in favor of the MX missile. I mean, this guy is totally dishonest. He didn't even jump in the race until a group of millionaires met in Dallas and called themselves Impact 88 and said, we want a candidate that will further our views and we want to influence the next election. We want Al Gore.
Another thing he's doing, if you read Nat Hentop's column in this week's Village Voice, he calls Gore the Likud party candidate here in this country because of his knee-jerk reaction to Israel, and Israel is always right, and obviously he's looking to get the Jewish vote.
Considering his wife is an ally of so many active anti-Semites. A lot of the so-called research that the Parents Music Resource Center quotes to justify their feelings about why music should be banned and censored comes from fundamentalists who are so far right they claim things like Catholics can't get into heaven, and especially there's about half a dozen of them now who've gone on record saying in other areas saying that the Jewish Star of David is a symbol of Satan. And Tipper Gore is happy to associate with these people. She has hawked her book, which is a how-to guide on how to shut down independent radio and live music. She's hawked it on the 700 Club. She has promoted it at the National Religious Booksellers Convention. And almost everybody, if you look deep enough into the people she quotes in her book, they aren't just right-wing, they are religious right. On page 27, I believe it was, she claimed dead Kennedys were, quote, a Trojan horse rolling explicit sex and violence into our homes. But I question who the real Trojan horse is. I mean, voters should realize this. We're dealing with a very dishonest guy here. I mean, if you think Nancy Reagan's Just Say No to Drugs campaign was a national embarrassment, wait till you get somebody far smarter and far more ambitious like Tipper Gore in the White House saying just say no to your own your favorite music or else.
I have every time I hear just say no to drugs, I marvel at how this country, especially the CIA, cooperates with the countries whose drug trade is what keeps them economically afloat.
The prospective callers on the line here, and we aren't getting any good crank calls yet.
Yeah, you really thrive on those, huh?
Yeah.
Jello Biafra's at the Ritz tonight.
You're stuck in traffic.
The people who are really angry probably are on the Long Island Expressway and have nowhere to go, and they don't have car phones. So, one more thing I wanted to bring up before we take some phone calls. Did I read someplace that you're against organized sports?
I'm not so much against organized sports as the emphasis on organized sports. I mean, there was far more emphasis when I was going to school on doing well in PE than doing well in academic subjects. Yeah. And there was also a lot of emphasis on cheating in the various sports, trying to give people, minor but nevertheless injuries in football, and in wrestling, some of the teachers were like, come on, make them hurt, make them hurt, make them hurt. Fair play was something that we weren't supposed to be taught. We were supposed to be taught what people, I guess, felt were necessary survival tactics and the kind of society that Giger illustrated so well in that painting.
Jello Biafra is with us, and he is the former lead singer of the Dead Kennedys. He is at the Ritz tonight, and he'll be performing spoken word pieces from his new album, No More Cocoons and Alternative Tentacles Records. We're at...
That'll be part one of the show, actually. It's a fairly long and a two-part performance. The other part will be a much longer discussion of Tipper Gore and her friends and what they want to censor and who's paying for it and why.
I wonder if Tipper would ever agree to appear with you someplace.
We appeared together on the Oprah Winfrey Show, actually. It was very interesting. She's very nice in person, as one might expect a political wife to be.
I said all conservatives are very nice in person.
The strangest part to me was when she said afterwards, you realize, Jello, that we agree on most things. I mean, I'm against nuclear war, and I like your Moral Majority song. And I asked her, are you aware that very same song is singled out in the tape your organization mails to parents for being explicitly violent, as her fundamentalist minister friend who narrates the tape said, they single us out for explicit violence for the line, blow it out your ass, Jerry Falwell. And I asked her if she was aware of this after she said she liked the song. She gave me a blank stare and said, no.
Mr. Wagner, principal.
He's your principal?
Yes, he is.
What did he do? Did he call you into the office?
He saw me in the hallway, and he said that didn't I send a letter home to your parents? And I said, yes, you did. And he said, well, what's the story? And I said, my parents said I didn't have to cut it if I didn't want to cut it. And he called me down to his office later, and he said, the way I see it, you're either going to be expelled or we're going to shave your head.
Expelled or shaved your head?
I'm either going to be suspended or my head's going to be shaved.
See, I find a shaved head more offensive than a head with hair on it.
So would I.
So, Mrs. Youngs, what did you do? What happened when your son came home, Matt came home, and told you that he was having a problem at school because of his haircut?
Well, I received a letter from the school stating that they would like his hair uniform length all over his head. The school found it very embarrassing. And the teachers were making comments, and they did not want to take him on field trips or have guest speakers come in. It was too embarrassing to them.